Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of a conversation and realized that the voice coming out of your mouth does not entirely sound like you? The words are yours, but something feels borrowed. It feels as though you are performing, rather than simply being. When you are around analytical people, your language becomes sharper and more intellectual. When you are around someone anxious, chaotic, or emotionally fragile, your voice softens, your posture changes, and you instinctively become whoever the situation needs you to be. Most people call this adaptability. They praise you for being easygoing, empathetic, and great with people. They admire how effortlessly you connect with different personalities. But there is a hidden cost. At the end of the day, when the conversations are over and the noise fades, an unsettling emptiness appears. You sit alone and wonder why you feel disconnected from yourself. A quiet question rises inside you. Who am I when nobody else is here? Because after spending hours adjusting to everyone else's needs, moods, and expectations, it becomes difficult to remember where your true self begins. If this sounds familiar, I want to offer you a different perspective. You are not fake, you are not unstable, and you do not have a fractured personality. What you may be experiencing is a survival response known as fawning. Your nervous system learned that safety comes through harmony, so it automatically adapts to the emotional atmosphere around you. And when discernment is added to that pattern, the effect becomes even stronger. You sense unspoken tension, hidden emotions, and subtle shifts in energy before anyone says a word. Your nervous system reads the room and immediately starts reshaping itself to maintain peace. The problem is that what begins as wisdom can slowly become self-erasure. You become so skilled at understanding everyone else that you lose connection with yourself. You become an expert at preserving relationships while quietly abandoning your own voice. That is why the exhaustion feels so deep. You are not tired from being around people. You are tired from becoming someone different for each one of them. Today, we are exposing the hidden cost of forced adaptability and uncovering the path back to your authentic baseline, the version of you that exists when the masks come off and your soul no longer needs permission to be itself. In psychology, the fawn response is one of the most sophisticated survival mechanisms a person can develop. It is the unconscious habit of preventing conflict by becoming exactly what the environment wants you to be. Instead of fighting, fleeing, or freezing, you adapt. You study the room, sense what feels safest, and reshape yourself accordingly. For many people, this pattern began early in life. If you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where emotions were unpredictable, or where you had to walk on eggshells to avoid conflict, your nervous system became highly alert. You learned to read facial expressions, monitor moods, and anticipate emotional shifts before they happened. That awareness became your superpower. You became incredibly skilled at sensing tension, reading people, and understanding what others needed. But instead of using that gift to stay grounded in your own identity, you began using it to change your identity to fit the room, and eventually that became your default setting. Now, as an adult, your system does not simply allow empathy, it encourages self-erasure. If someone feels insecure, you dim your own light. If they are judgmental, you soften your truth. If they are uncomfortable, you instinctively adjust yourself to protect the connection. People call this kindness. They call it adaptability. But there is a hidden cost. The more you shape yourself around everyone else, the less familiar your own reflection becomes. You become everyone's mirror, while your authentic self remains hidden in the shadows. The goal was never to lose yourself, to keep the peace. The goal was to carry your peace into the room without losing yourself in it. Because your gift was meant to help you understand people, not disappear for them. The tragedy of the chameleon persona is that you become universally liked, yet deeply unknown. People admire the version of you that was carefully adjusted for their comfort. They love the agreeable listener. They love the person who always understands, never challenges, and effortlessly matches their energy. But very few people ever meet the real you, because every thought, conviction, opinion, and boundary passes through a silent filter before it reaches the outside world. A filter that constantly asks, is this safe? Will this create tension? Will they still accept me if I show them who I really am? And little by little, your authentic voice gets pushed further into the background. This creates a specific form of exhaustion that many people never recognize: identity burnout. You think socializing drains you because you dislike people, but that is not the real reason. What exhausts you is the endless performance, the constant monitoring, the invisible calculations running in the background of every interaction. Are they comfortable? Am I being too much? Did I say the right thing? Should I tone myself down? Your mind never truly rests. Every conversation becomes emotional labor. Every gathering becomes a stage. Every relationship requires energy just to maintain the version of yourself that feels acceptable to others. Eventually, the cost becomes too high. You begin canceling plans, ignoring messages, withdrawing from gatherings that once felt meaningful. Not because you suddenly dislike people, but because your soul is exhausted from constantly adapting. The deeper truth is that solitude becomes the only place where you can finally put the masks down. The only place where you do not have to manage anyone else's comfort. The only place where your thoughts can exist without being edited. The only place where your spirit can breathe without performing. And that is why the isolation feels so tempting. Not because you are antisocial, but because when you spend all day giving away pieces of yourself, solitude becomes the last sanctuary where you can finally come home to who you are. So, how do we shift from forced adaptability to grounded authenticity? How do we stop the automatic shape-shifting that has been running our relationships for years? It begins with a practice we can call active disentanglement, the intentional process of separating your true identity from the version of yourself that was built for survival. There are 3 boundaries you must establish starting today. 1. The 3-second pause. The chameleon response happens at the speed of instinct. Someone asks for your opinion, your time, or your agreement, and before your spirit has a chance to speak, your survival system answers for you. This is where the 3-second pause becomes powerful. Before responding, allow yourself a brief moment of silence. Pull your awareness inward. Ask yourself a simple question. Is this my genuine answer, or am I trying to maintain a false peace? Those 3 seconds create space between your conditioning and your truth. And in that space, authenticity has a chance to breathe. 2. Reclaim holy friction. The chameleon persona fears disappointment because it learned to associate disagreement with rejection. It believes harmony must be protected at all costs. But growth requires friction. Truth requires friction. A life built entirely around keeping everyone comfortable eventually becomes a prison. Start small. Share a different opinion. Choose the restaurant you actually want. Express a preference without immediately apologizing for it. Allow yourself to disagree without rushing to repair the tension. The goal is not conflict. The goal is discovering that your identity can survive it. Every time you remain grounded during a minor disagreement, your nervous system learns a new lesson. Approval is not the source of your safety. 3. Define your sanctuary baseline. The most important question is this: who are you when nobody is watching? When you are alone, free from expectations, free from performance, free from the need to manage anyone else's emotions, what remains? What brings your spirit peace? What values feel non-negotiable? What beliefs stay intact when there is no audience to impress? Write these things down. Return to them often, because when you know who you are in private, you are far less likely to lose yourself in public. The goal is not to become rigid or unkind. The goal is to become rooted, so rooted in your own identity that when you enter a crowded room, you arrive as a pillar rather than a mirror, grounded in truth rather than shaped by every passing wind.